Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for April 19th, 2011. I'm Joe Lynch.
I'm Cayenne Anderson.
I'm Alderman Bill Roche.
Our guest tonight is the Alderman from Ward 1 in the city of Somerville. First elected to public office in a special election in 1996, the former Board of Aldermen president also served as acting mayor of the city. For over 30 years, he has served the people and businesses of Somerville in volunteer, appointed, and elected capacities. On the Board of Aldermen, his recent tackling of such controversial issues and subsequent legislation sponsorship of the anti-gang ordinance, the living wage ordinance, the IKEA local hiring agreement, and the city's responsible employer ordinance has won him praise by most, but he's also received his share of critics. Voted multiple times by Somerville media outlets as the most popular elected official, he is a graduate of both Lesley and Boston University. He and his family make their home in East Somerville, and it is our pleasure to welcome for his first visit to Greater Somerville, Ward 1 Alderman and former acting mayor of Somerville, Alderman Bill Roche. Now, before we start, Billy, we're having a little audio problem here. So I hope people at home are not having the same audio problems we're having here in the studio.
Can I just make one suggestion?
Sure.
I'm just looking over here. You've got a few effects. Is there anything that says echo?
No.
Okay.
So hopefully somebody's out in the lobby. Rebecca. Rachel?
Or Rachel.
Rachel. And you can, if you're hearing the same thing that we're hearing, maybe you can come in and give us a pointer on what's wrong with the audio. Or if you're watching at home and you're having trouble with our audio,
call us.
Give us a call, 617-629
9876.
9876, and let us know that we're having some reverberation feedback. But before we start, I want to thank Alderman Roche for coming in. I've tried several times before to get him come in, and it's a joke between the two of us that I usually call him when he's got a committee meeting, of which you have multiple, or I call him around a holiday in the middle of the summer and say, Bill, why don't you come on in for your debut appearance on Greater Somerville? That doesn't happen, Bill.
Glad I finally made it. Thank you for inviting me.
No committee meeting.
No committee meeting.
No holiday.
No holiday.
He had nothing else to do, so he decided to come and join
I
us.
cleared my calendar weeks ago. Who wouldn't want to be on this award-winning cable TV show?
We love when they suck up to us.
With two of the greatest hosts in the greater Boston area. Who wouldn't want to be here?
Billy, thank you so much for coming in.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So before we start, hopefully somebody's going to call us and say, no, you're fine with your audio, because we record the show, and as you know, we send it up to the internet.
Yep.
Greater Somerville at wordpress.com. So.
Yeah.
But if we do have troubles with the audio, Bill, that means you get to come back for a second appearance.
Lucky me.
No? 30 years of volunteer, appointed, and elected serving the city of Somerville. I liked what you sent to me earlier, though. You said you were an activist in the East Somerville community. And I told you I was going to ask you this. What do you see as the difference between the activists of the 70s and 80s in the city and the activists that we have today?
You know, I don't think there is much of a difference. I think everybody's in it for the same reasons. They want to make Somerville a better place to live, work, and play, you know, as the saying goes. People get in it because they've moved here, they've made a commitment to the city, and a lot of people just want to give back to the city what the city's given to them over the years.
Yep.
So I don't think there's a big difference. I think people get in it for the same reasons, people do it for the same reasons, and they have the same passion today as I did 30 years ago when I first started.
You know, I think you're absolutely right. The technology has changed. You don't have to hoof it street to street to try to do leaflets and flyers, and you know, with all the stuff that we now have in the city, the reverse 311 system where you can communicate directly into somebody's home, the internet, the plethora of blogs that are out there, the newspapers do a fairly good job in the city of covering events. So.
No, you're right. The communication, the technology has definitely changed and made it a lot easier to reach out. Community organizing is a lot easier now.
Yep.
You know, back in the 70s, early 80s, you know, right into the 90s, you had a community meeting, you'd expect 30, 40, 50 people to show up.
Right.
Today, a lot of people will say, can't make it, but send me the notes on email.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
I mean, that's a good purpose of email.
Because it still gives somebody a chance to comment
Exactly.
on what happened.
Yep.
They don't necessarily have to be up there in the public.
That's
You
right.
know, they don't have to be sitting in the chamber in the view of the camera to make sure their voice is heard.
No, absolutely. And personally, I'd rather receive emails than phone calls.
Right.
Because I can get home late at night after meetings up at City Hall at 9:30, 10 o'clock, when it's uncomfortable to return a phone call.
Yep.
But I can certainly sit down and answer several emails.
Yeah.
So I much prefer communicating by email. Naturally, I pick up the phone for people who do leave messages,
Yep.
but email is my preferred method of communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that takes care of your early years. You didn't have email, so you were probably on the phone every night of the week.
We're on the phone every night of the week, and at the time, my kids were younger, and
Yeah.
one of my kids says to me, "You got to get your own line."
That's fun.
I said, "This is my own line."
East Somerville. You're originally from Somerville,
Right.
but you grew up on Spring Hill,
Right.
up behind Somerville Hospital.
Yep.
And then when Eugene married, you bought down in East Somerville.
That's right. Yep.
Raised your family there. How has it changed from the 70s to 2011?
The city,
East Somerville.
I think East Somerville has come an awful long way. We've been down there 40 years now. And when we first moved down there, we moved down there because it was really the only place in the city we could afford to live
Yeah.
and afford to buy a house.
Yeah.
Both Gene and I grew up in Ward 5, Gene and Magoon Square near you.
Yeah.
I was at St. Catherine's Parish in Spring Hill. It was kind of like eerie moving down to East Somerville. We didn't know that area of the city well.
It's the other side of McGrath Highway.
Other side of McGrath Highway.
Yeah.
Didn't know an awful lot of people from the high school that, both Gene and I graduated from high school. Didn't know an awful lot of people who lived down in Ward 1. Our main intent was to move down there. We'll live there for a few years, get some equity in the house, and then maybe move back to the west side of the city.
Yeah.
Here we are 40 years later.
Yeah.
We love it. We found a home there. And what I found out about East Somerville is it's probably the tightest knit neighborhood in the entire city.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody knows each other. Everybody helps each other out. Everybody's willing to lend a hand, whether you're a lifetime resident of East Somerville or whether you just moved in there 6 months ago.
Yep.
Everybody's willing to reach out and help. And I don't see that, and I haven't found that in any part of the city at all.
Except for the
Somerville.
Magoon Square neighborhood.
Except for the
Of course,
Magoon Square
yeah.
neighborhood. That's correct, yeah.
I wonder what that
Okay,
is,
well,
yeah.
you got to be careful, Bill. You're not campaigning here. You got some political activists sitting here watching every word you're saying. So, no, East Somerville to me has always been that neighborhood or that section of the city where you have pockets of neighborhoods, and each of those neighborhoods were mostly, from my era, were identified with the parks, or they were identified with the parishes,
Right.
the church parishes. So it was very, very tight-knit down there. The rivalry with Glen and, the rest of the parks with
Yep.
Trum and Foss. And
Yep.
I mean, it was an amazing time to grow up in the city in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I see it replicated now, and Cayenne can jump in, but I see it replicated in the new wave of immigrants that have
Yeah.
come into the city. They're extremely tight-knit, whether it's through church or their social clubs or their sports clubs. So it's just, it's a continuing, ongoing story.
Well, I think one of the things I like about East Somerville, there's been a recent push, I think, to really involve East Somerville and West Somerville, and through East Somerville main streets and Union Square main
Yeah.
streets. I really think that's a wonderful initiative because I think there are a lot of things about East Somerville that just because they're it's over that McGrath. I just think there are wonderful pockets in it. There's wonderful restaurants, unique shops, and with the developments that are going on down there in the next 10, 15 years, I think it's really going to transform itself, hopefully for the better, but
And it has been. It's a very
Yeah.
diverse neighborhood. Like the restaurants, probably get the best Brazilian
Yep.
food
wonderful
anywhere in the city.
pastry shop. What's the name of that pastry
Patsy's
shop?
Pastry.
Patsy's.
Patsy's Pastries.
Best in the city. We have Vinny's,
Dangerous
Low
place.
Broadway, the Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon. Yeah.
It's a great place. You can eat down there. You can shop down there. I personally, and people laugh at me, I very rarely leave East Somerville to do anything.
No, really. See, now I was just saying that to my friend. I was like, to cross the river to go into Boston is such a But that's I mean, McGrath, really? You gotta get it all down. You never cross the, okay.
You can eat down there, you can shop down there. And don't forget, East Somerville
Dunkin' Donuts is technically on the west side though, right?
But it's 1-1.
Okay,
Still
well,
easy,
all
still
right,
easy.
fair
It's
enough.
not what the hell till you hit
Okay.
the Old Star Market.
That's
Fair
right.
enough.
That's
The
right.
fire station. The fire station is really the beginning of what the
Once
hell.
IKEA gets there, you know, you'll never have to leave,
That's
depending
right.
on your opinion on it. But anyway, we'll
Well,
get to that.
you've already got, you and Gene already have a down payment on one of those luxury high-rises that going up at Assembly,
You weren't
right?
supposed to say that, Joe.
We're going to get into Assembly and Innerbelt and
Yeah.
East Somerville Main Streets in a little bit, but I did have one question for you. When you were acting mayor of the city, you took over when Congressman Mike Capuano, who was the former mayor here, went to Congress.
Right.
Were you ever tempted to, like, try to ram through some legislation that's always been your favorite for years? You know, like merge some of the wards so you could get more power? What do you think?
What is it? Like a warlord's like type of conquer
There
and
actually was not a lot of time for your own agenda.
Right.
There was an awful lot going on in the city at the time. You know, Mike Capuano had a very full plate when he left. You know, one of the reasons he was elected as Congress is because he did such a great job as mayor, and he had so much going on. You know, when I was the acting mayor, we were completing 2 of the new schools, the
Yeah.
Haley School and the Kennedy School. So I was kind of charged with, you know, trying to wrap those up and hand them over to the new mayor, finished. At the same time, we were beginning to build the Capuano School.
Yep.
I had one piece of legislation that we did enact was I signed the living wage law,
Yep.
into the living wage into law during that time frame, and we were starting the budget process for the new mayor that was coming in.
Yep.
So there was an awful lot going on. If I had my time to think about could I enact new legislation, you know, maybe I would have. But
No new drapes in the office.
Nothing, no.
And you didn't buy a Cadillac.
no,
So-
I didn't even take the mayor's car.
I don't know, Bill. So let's move into some of the things. Well, I want to thank you because this, you know, we're keeping tallies here on the hit list. We've had the current mayor on the show. We've had former Mayor Dorothy Kelly Gay on the show. We've now had the former acting mayor on the show, and next month is former Mayor Gene Brune, current Register of Deeds. So if any of the Capuanos are watching the show, you may want to say to Congressman Capuano, you know, you're the only one that hasn't been on Lynch's and Anderson's
Yeah.
show. So
That'll probably get him.
probably not.
pressure.
Assembly Square, East Somerville neighborhoods, and the Innerbelt, all within Ward 1.
Yep.
Busy.
What's going to give us a picture of your biggest hopes for that district, eastern part of the city, and your biggest fears of what's going to happen through all this development and change that's taking place?
I guess my biggest hope is Assembly Square happens. We've been dealing with it for an awful long time. The mayor currently is doing everything in his power to make sure that it moves forward, and it moves forward with the right type of development down there. The board for the last several months has been agonizing over whether or not to support a $25 million loan, which is called a DIF.
The diff, okay.
That the mayor's looking for. We've had our second public hearing. Marion Houston, the chair of finance, had a second public hearing the other night to get neighborhood and public input on it. It's huge. It's big. In my opinion, it's the right thing to do. Is to float this bond, get the $25 million, because in order for Assembly Square Mall to happen, or for the Assembly Square build out to happen, we need the orange line. It's not going to happen without the orange line. Nothing's going to happen without that orange
So
line.
simply put, Billy, this is a puzzle that's taking place down at Assembly. You got the developer, you got the state, and you got the city.
That's right.
The developer and the city want the orange line stop because that's public transportation to bring them to the build-out Assembly Square.
Yep.
So this DIF, this $25 million bond, is nothing more than the city building the infrastructure, borrowing to build the infrastructure.
Born against the future tax revenue.
Right, and at the end of the day, once this Assembly Square, this piece of Assembly Square gets built out, it's the tax revenues from that new build-out that will pay for that bond. Is that?
That's correct. It's 3
Okay.
parcels,
Yeah.
3 blocks of land. Those 3 blocks of land only the tax revenue generated from those will go back to pay off the bond.
Okay.
Now, can I ask you a question regarding the orange line? Is my understanding that there was a recent shift in allocations to what was, I want to say about 3.5 million from what was the community path or designated in amount of money to, it's shifted to the Assembly Square station, correct? So the second head house. So I guess why I'm asking that is because sequentially you think, okay, well, if they're going ahead and putting that money towards the Assembly Square head house, one would hope that, you know, kind of one would follow on top of the other. Or, you know, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think that that is a good sign? That
I think it is a good sign. I think the community path is going to happen.
Okay.
There may be a delay, but that's definitely going to happen. That's too important, not only to this city, but to the city
I
of
agree.
Boston, not to
Yeah.
happen. If the orange line doesn't happen, nothing will happen down at Assembly Square Mall.
Okay,
we-
yeah.
I don't think you're going to get any disagreement.
Yeah, you know, and the only thing we have to figure out now is how to finance everything.
Right.
The earmark from the federal government fell through, and that's what put us in this predicament now that, you know, the state basically said, City of Somerville will come up with 25 million, developers come up with 15 million, we'll pay for the rest.
Who put that earmark in? Was that?
It's Capuano, Congressman Capuano.
Congressman Capuano put that in. That's something I want to ask him about. And it fell through, you say, Bill?
And it fell through.
Fell through, okay.
Fell through.
We'll get him on here.
And I'm not sure that had anything to do with the administration changing from Democrat to Republican at the same time.
Probably
You know,
not.
it's-
Probably not. So, in effect, what's going on at the Board of Aldermen right now is some concern about the intricacies of a complicated deal like this.
That's right, yeah.
And what the mayor was talking about when he was on the show with Cayenne and I was basically he wanted all three parties to hold hands at the edge of the cliff and say, if we're going to put up this money, the state is going to come in and put up some money, and Frit, the developer for Assembly Square, is going to put up some money. And we're all going to hold hands, and we're going to have some binding agreements that if this one doesn't go, the other two aren't going to go.
And that's right. And, you know, the gamble here, in my opinion, is not doing it. If we don't put up this 25 million and the orange line isn't built, that's the gamble.
You missed the boat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a
You know,
good point.
a lot of people think Federal Realty might walk. You know, they think they might go bankrupt if we go into this agreement and someone will be out $25 million. You know, Frit is a very successful developer. They're a $4 billion corporation.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going bankrupt. They're not going anywhere.
They put so much money into it
They
already.
put about 150 million of their own money into it already.
Which leads to some of the skeptics' questions. And you know, Bill, you've known me long enough that I always kind of look at both sides and ask questions for both sides. Why would such a wealthy company want us to pay the $25 million for the building of that infrastructure?
In my opinion, is they're right at the edge of their limit. I think the players that are moving the pieces for Federal Realty, who are here in the city, have probably exceeded their limit already. And I don't think they have the authority to spend any more money. And they may even be on the verge of, you know, perhaps even being in jeopardy with their own corporation.
But don't you think, Joe, I mean, just to your point, I mean, the Economic Times, my understanding was they were originally, that was the plan, they were going to pay for the infrastructure, and then everything tanked. So,
Right.
you know, how many businesses haven't taken advantage of that in
It's a
some way
very
or not?
good
I mean,
point because I
it
think
is
what's
business.
I think what's happening is there are a lot of people in the city who hung on the mayor's words during, you know, the 2003, 2005, 2008 comments that he was making was that the city of Somerville and its taxpayers weren't going to be paying for this stuff. It was the developer who had made the commitment to pay for the infrastructure improvements. Well, in case somebody was living on the planet of Neptune for the past few years, with the financial tanking for a lot of things, what you're saying is Frit has had to redo their numbers as well.
That's right. And the earmark fell through from the federal government.
Right.
That didn't fall through, we wouldn't be in the position we're in right now. There's a $50 million
$50
earmark
million.
Yep.
by,
Wow.
you know, by the federal government. That fell through.
Yep.
So we're in the position we're in. I think the mayor came up with a great idea with this diff. I think it's going to work. I think the aldermen are doing their due diligence right now, making sure all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and all the agreements. They want to make sure the taxpayers' money is protected moving forward. And it's taking probably longer than some people would like. But at the same time, the aldermen doing their due diligence and making sure that we're doing the right thing.
Well, you know as well as I do, Bill, that when the taxpayers of this city look at the Board of Aldermen, that's really their connection to government.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
They
Yep.
say, you're there to represent our interests, not the mayor's,
Yep.
and not the developers.
So they're doing their due diligence. I agree with that. But when can we expect, or when do you think this may be? You know, are there specific deadlines that you're saying? Okay, if we don't make this decision by such and such a date, we could really this could be in jeopardy.
I would say we're saying not much is going on this week, but Wednesday night we have another finance committee meeting. I would say Wednesday night we're probably going to make a decision whether or not to approve.
Next Wednesday?
This Wednesday coming.
This coming Wednesday.
Tomorrow night.
Okay.
Tomorrow night.
Wow.
I would say tomorrow night we'll make a decision whether or not to give the mayor the authority to go and float this bond.
We wish you a lot of luck with that. I did send my comments in. I'm not going to give my opinion now, but...
That's a first.
well, there's
Sorry.
public record, but let's
No,
move, well,
okay.
I want to keep it moving a little bit. You share another part of the eastern part of the city with Alderman Houston in the Innerbelt,
Yep.
part of the Innerbelt area. 20 years out, you see it all
Wow.
built out, and there's seamless in between what's going on between Boston and Somerville's border.
I do.
Yep.
Yeah, I do. Holiday Inn may be a little bit ahead of the curve now. They're about to do a multi-million-dollar renovation on their building.
Oh, wow.
Complete refacing, complete remodeling of the whole building, taking their lounge and their restaurant and trying to make it more community-friendly for people in the city of Somerville to use, to make
Wow.
it someplace that people in the city want to go to and
Right.
watch a game. It's going to be a semi-sports bar. But they're going to do a complete refacing over the next several months. You'll probably see it by the fall being completed out. The Innerbelt, as we speak, is being built up. New tenants are moving in. There's still, the thought of maybe Bob Kraft going in there with the soccer stadium.
I was going to ask you about that.
It's, I've heard initial conversations. He wants to do a study. There's nothing there that's set in stone. There's nothing there that is even certain that he wants to come in. The mayor has made a commitment that nothing's going to happen until there's public input. So if it gets to the point where Bob Kraft is very serious about this, then we'll step back, we'll start having neighborhood meetings, we'll start having public hearings, we'll get the neighborhood input, and we'll say, is this really the right thing to do for the city of Somerville?
Yeah.
And for that East Somerville neighborhood.
Yep.
You can weigh your pros and cons right now. The pros, brings jobs. Cons are, could it be noisy and traffic congestion?
It's always going to be traffic, Bill. You know that. It's always going to come down to traffic. If Kraft walks in and says, I guarantee 10,000 jobs to Somerville residents, you'll see the opinion pendulum go this way. If Kraft comes in and it starts, back and forth, and there's no guarantees about taking care of the traffic you generate or providing jobs for some, then you're going to have the discussion.
Yeah.
So good luck with that, my friend.
No, thanks. And a big piece is North Point. That's fallen through.
Right.
That's dead right now. Nothing's happening there.
Right.
If that ever picks up again, I can say, as you were saying, seamless from Somerville to Cambridge to Boston.
Yeah.
That'll happen if North Point ever picks up and starts developing again.
But the North Point developers, it switched over. So there were 3 new developers, one of which was connected to Magic Johnson out in L.A. I heard that. But
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, apparently, right? But who knew?
Where
but,
she gets this stuff.
No, I got Jim. This is legitimate because
I
this
believe
is connected
you.
to some other things that I'm doing. So point being, is that not those 3 developers that have come together for North Point? That is no longer. That was kind of
The last I heard, that project's dead in the water.
Really.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, there was a connection between the new investors at MaxPac and North Point.
Really.
Oh, really?
2 of them came out of there.
Came out of North Point?
Came out of
And
North
came-
Point, so I kind of,
Yeah.
and,
Are they for subdividing the parcel?
yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so,
It keeps
developers
changing.
are developers. You got to kind of watch them. They're moving all over
They're
the
just kind of
chessboard,
circling
so-
Somerville, like
And they're
little
watching the
vultures,
economy too,
right?
and they're not going to do anything until the economy is right. It's
Right, but, there are things that the city can do exclusive of developers, and that's what's taking place down at East Somerville Main Streets.
That's
where
right.
you have existing property
Yeah.
owners trying to bring it up.
Yep.
Invite more people in, or a Summer Streets thing.
Yep.
I got my opinion on Summer Streets. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Yeah. Closing Broadway between Magoon Square and Powder House Circle is not exactly a bright thing
When
to
is
do.
that going to happen?
That happened last year, and the merchants were irate.
We did the same thing from Broadway to the Sullivan Square line.
A little short a distance straight line. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it might work on that, but
When is that supposed to happen? I'm sorry.
they do it in May and June.
Yeah, East Somerville's going to be the first one this year.
Yeah.
It was so
Experimenting.
successful last year and it went over well that we're going to be the first ones this year.
Well, see,
We're
aren't you
not
glad you
we're not
started a
snobby
trend?
like the people
Aren't you
up in
glad you
Bloomsbury
stayed
Square.
in East Somerville instead of the snobs up the other end?
But we've done a lot of work. I mean, East Somerville Main Street has come in. Carrie Dancy is the director.
She does a
has done
wonderful job.
She's done a lot of work.
Yep.
Her board of directors are hard workers. They're volunteering their time. But at the same time, we just rezoned all of Lower Broadway. We made it more enticing for businesses to come in and do business with us.
Yeah.
We gave them a little bit more leeway on the size of the buildings, the height of the buildings. And already it's paying dividends because the old Mellotone building, somebody just purchased, and is going to be putting four retail
remember it,
units
yeah,
in there.
yeah.
And then facing the whole place. It's actually going to be a beautiful building. We're widening the sidewalks. We're adding 8 feet to the sidewalks
Great.
on both sides of the street. A little controversial, 1 lane of traffic each way.
Yes, but
Yeah.
a bike lane. Was there a
In
bike
the
lane?
bike lane.
See,
in
that's
the bike
critical.
lane,
That's
but,
great.
But more trees, wider
Okay.
sidewalks, more park benches, more lighting.
And now, how the community? There was a big meeting on this. What was it like a few months ago?
We had,
Wasn't it?
actually
Where
had,
some of
we
those
had
things-
6 meetings on
Yeah.
Lower Broadway renovation.
And so a lot of the comments from the community then were, you know,
Every comment from the community was put into the plan.
Well, we
Wonderful.
want to wish you a lot of luck because in my experience with Magoon
We're out of
Square,
time.
we went, almost 4 years, 4 or 5 years of community meetings. So,
Nothing happens overnight.
you always have fun here on Greater Somerville. So you're going to come back and see us?
Well, we have to finish this, right? This is only part 1.
Yeah, and you're concentrating on re-election for Alderman in Ward 1.
I am.
Yeah,
Yep.
and is there any other thing you want to tell us tonight? Because, Perro's told us he's not running. The mayor's told us he is running.
we're just looking for the dirt.
We're
Bill.
looking for that part of it.
Since
to
the mayor
close
is
out the
running,
show.
I'm focusing in on Ward 1.
There you go.
Couple
I
of
tried.
events. Couple of kind of events. We only got 30 seconds,
I
Joe.
tried. Go.
Earth Day Festival at Tufts University on the 22nd from 12 to 4. The Rabies Clinic for cats and dogs on the 23rd from 10 to 12. And that's at the Department of Public Works on Franny Road. And then there's the annual fundraiser for the Somerville Homeless Coalition on April 23rd at the Armory at 6 o'clock. So definitely check that out. It's a worthwhile cause.
And I brought gifts.
Oh my goodness.
gifts.
Gifts.
Look at this.
What does it
I get
say?
the red one.
Roche for
Ward
mayor.
one.
It says Roche for mayor. Look at that.
Say goodnight,
Thank
Joe.
you, everyone, for joining us tonight. That was Alderman Bill Roche joining us here on Greater Somerville. As always, stay safe and stay informed.
Good night.
night.